Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And I was delighted last week when I reached out to Sarah Glassey and asked her to come on the podcast to share her story. And she said yes. So I'm really excited that she's here. Now, Sarah has some great things to talk about when it comes to working your way up through an organization, asking for promotions, but also she wanted to share some of the things that she learned at TechPixies that has helped her along the way. So, Sarah, thank you for being here today. I'm really delighted that you said yes.
It was my absolute pleasure, Joy. Great to be here.
So I shared on Instagram last week a letter that you wrote to me. You very kindly sent me and a friend who ended up being Claire Fargio to Blenheim Palace for an afternoon tea. And that was such a sweet gift. And you actually sent it to me 2 years ago, and it took me 2 years to figure out how to
believe it took you 2 years.
how to give myself the time to go and do that. But it was such a wonderful afternoon. We had just the best time, some great conversations, some great clarity. And I really wanted to really say thank you to that. And so I sent you a note saying, thank you, we had this wonderful day. But then also I thought I should ask you to come on the podcast because you've done some incredible things the last 2 years. And I think people who listen to our podcast would really benefit from your experience. So just explain to people what's happened in your life the last couple of years, and what life was like before, you really found your voice and your power and really lean into who you are.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, if I'm honest with you. And I think, if I take myself back to, before I joined TechPixies, it was March 21. And just at that sort of like time, people say they were in a bit of a, they go through bits of pickle. But I felt like I was in a vat of pickle in the factory, and it was just not a nice place to be. And, I'd been out of work for 9 months. My confidence had just completely gone. There'd been things that had been happening, and I was finding it really tough. So I was looking to, move from, where I was working before into doing sort of like a different field of work. And the job market at that time was really tough, because if you were looking to do something new as well, the jobs were, you had to have 5 years experience in that job role and in that category as well. So it was really hard to navigate. And I wanted to find something that I really wanted to do. So I was being, picky at the start, and then it wasn't going anywhere. And then I kind of like got myself in this like, well, I really don't know what I want to do now. And it affected me in, physically. I was sort of like, my head was just booming with stress and anxiety, because, in the back of my head, it was like, I've got to get a job, and I need to get a job. And then my stomach was just in knots. And I felt my throat was really tight as well. And then, so there were all those feelings. And then, at that time, I was also homeschooling and it felt like you were kind of like running this sort of like 24-hour cafe as well. Because like, it was just constantly backwards and forwards with, sort of like, day-to-day things as well. And I wasn't sleeping, it was just this fear of having to, not only get an interview, but then be in it. And this was sort of like going through in my head as well. And then I was doing this other thing of just bottling it all up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was reading a story to my daughter, and it was a book called Ruby's Worry. And it's a beautiful book, and it's about Ruby. And she has a worry, and it starts off with a small sort of like cloud. And as the story progresses, this, she's going about her day-to-day things that she's doing. And throughout the book, this cloud's getting bigger and bigger and grayer and grayer. And then, it gets towards the end, and she's walking through the park, and she sees somebody else who's also got one of these clouds behind them, and the two of them are talking. And so it's sort of like, the story behind that is for obviously people to start talking about their worries. And I was getting a bit like, because I was saying this to my daughter, but I wasn't doing it myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of like, I was just like, what can I do to get out of this? And there were also all these other things which, you know, I know about now, but at the time I was saying to myself, well, I'm too old to work in an agency again. I don't have the right skills. I'm too old, you know, to start again. And it was just sort of like feeling like that's like, you know, best before date kind of thing. So yeah, in a nutshell, it was wasn't in a good place.
I think it's so important to talk about that. And I'm glad that you're able to talk about that. You know, obviously things have changed a lot for you, and we're going to talk about that too. But a lot of the calls that I do when I'm doing one-on-one calls with people who are trying to decide what they're going to do next in their life, and a lot of times I will talk to someone who's been out of work for 10 months, or they've been out of work for a year, or, you know, and they thought what they were going to do was have this discovery year. And then it, you know, and now that discovery is turned into stress, and they really feel like they can't turn things around. But you did something interesting, because you didn't stay there. You actually got support, you got some help, and things started to change for you. So talk about
this is from joining TechPixies.
Well, it's nice that you came through our program, and
I think you know, I saw the ad, and I loved it because there was pictures of sort of, you know, people my own age, and there was bright colours, and it was a boot camp, and I thought, right, well, I can do this. You know, I know I'm going to have to sign up to something, but I won't do that. I'll just do the boot camp. And and then as soon as I joined, I was like, I'm signing up to this. It just had that feeling of, this is, you know, something, you know, it's a great opportunity to be on. And I instantly sort of like had that feeling was there. And I did the boot camp, and then, you know, signed up. And one of the things I sort of like promised, it did feel like this is going to be the start of something. It genuinely, you know, felt that the lift in me was really big, and I started to look at things differently, and I wanted to feel healthy. So I sort of like did this thing where, if I'm investing all this money, then it's got to work, and I've got to get myself in a good place. So I started being more healthy. I committed to stop drinking alcohol, to get my head in a better place. So I stopped drinking for 18 months. I started doing the couch to 5K again, and made myself, like, you know, go out for walks, and just by doing sort of like small steps like that. And I also did a boot camp thing as well. I met a few people like in a park, and just basically got shouted up to do some squats and stuff. But I was getting my energy levels were getting better. So that was like a key thing. And then I, you know, being on the course, there was the regular calls, and they were different as well. So you had, you know, if you were saying you were promoting like a life coaching course, I wouldn't have signed up to it, because I would have been like, well, I need to get some skills to get a job. And that felt like a luxury, but it was that was the part that I really needed. And, you know, there were things in my past which I probably hadn't addressed, just kept going in this sort of like, you know, work hard, successful come kind of like attitude. But there were things with my confidence, you know, in my 20s, and in, you know, at school, you always, you know, school reports was always like, you need to be more confident, and those words would always like being in the back of my head as well. It was great to, you know, have that time to go through those aspects in the course.
Yeah, I think when most people sign up for the social media program, they don't think they need the life coaching. They don't think that that's important for them. And then actually, once they start getting into the mindset coaching and life coaching, they realize what an asset it is, you know, especially for, like you said, like for your energy, to shift your energy from feeling a certain way to feeling another way. And that energy shows up when you go to a job interview and when you are working in a new job. So once you started, this energy started to shift, you started taking care of yourself, you stopped the alcohol, you started working out, you obviously were learning these new skills. What happened next?
So within a month, I just sort of like, things went from nothing to, I got down to being one of the last 3 in a job interview, which I really, really wanted this job. And I had to send in a video of myself answering these questions. So that was a big thing to do. Then
right. You had to take off your invisibility cloak and create a video that went in before you even talked to them.
Yeah. Then I had a line manager interview. Then there was a chat with the person who was currently doing the role. They were going on maternity. And then there was another interview with like 2 big cheeses. And then there was this task, and it was terrible. Anyway, that was another story. But I was proud of myself. But I got down to the last 3, so I thought I can do this now, and I started to believe in myself. And then I applied for another job, and this was working as a freelancer and helping some small business owner, and they wanted somebody to really help with sort of like the website updates, social media posting, and they'd listed all these types of tech that they needed people with experience on. And I wrote to her, and I said, I've started this course. I did dig out the email.
Oh, I love this
morning. And yeah, so she said she wanted somebody to email marketing, podcast manager, social media, website updates, and online booking system updates and sort of like editing. So it was all like Zapier, Acuity, Stripe, MailChimp, ConvertKit, Squarespace, Canva, like all these things. And I said, I recently used Canva because we did the vision board on the course. So that took me ages. So I was just enjoying like playing around with it. And I said, I do not have any working experience of the other systems yet. And that was obviously a key thing on the course about using that word. Yeah. I said, but I've got bags of enthusiasm to get stuck in and learn. So I thought I've got nothing to lose here. And for part of the submission, I had to send in my rocket fuel.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. So for those who are listening who don't know Rocket Fuel is a great book by Gino Wickman. And it helps you work out, like, am I a visionary? Am I an integrator? Meaning, am I the person that's leading the business, or am I the person who's building the business? So you had to do that quiz just even for the job. That's so cool.
Yeah, so I came out an integrator, and then I had an interview, and so she's a yoga teacher, so she's very zen, and we just we got on really well. I was myself. And I'd been honest and upfront about, the skills that I had. But I did, the big push was saying I'm in TechPixies and I'm learning this stuff. There's modules I can ask people, and I'm so keen to start, and I'm available. and then 20 minutes after the interview, she called me and she said, yeah, brilliant, and she paid me the going rate, but that was obviously to actually, do the job. That's not for me learning. So I had time to learn as I was on the job. So it was
building it while you're flying it.
Yeah. So it would take me, obviously longer than someone who'd got that experience, but I was learning and I was doing it. And when I did my first invoice, it was for £400, right? But to me, it was for 4,000. Yeah. This was like a new thing, and this person, I never met this person before, so I was like, well, I've done that, and now I've got can do a few hours a week doing this role, and it's the start of something different and new. So that was a big push. But I never would have applied for that job had I not been on.
So there's so
be brave and all that kind of thing.
I love everything you said. And one of the key things, and we teach this in the Superhero Bootcamp, is the power of the word yet. And I do say to everyone who does our program, like at the end of our social media, at the end of 6 weeks, the Social Media Accelerator, you will have learned 5 different pieces of technology, right? And if you can learn 5 pieces of technology in 5 weeks, you can learn anything, right? And I think that is so true. So I love how you approach that. So that first job that you went for, in the end, did that one work out, and then you switched to do this one, or did that one not work out, but you stayed the course and got this other one?
So I was doing some freelancing, and then 2 of my colleagues, friends from my Manchester days, so John and Cole, they were regularly sort of like just reaching out to me. They knew that I was out of work, and they were just sort of like, oh, we think this job might be good for you. And I've got some, brilliant friends. And they knew of a role that was opening up in their London office, and kind of like, put my foot in the door there. I had an interview, and I got that role at Total Media. So shout out to to Total Media. And I had a senior role in client services, and it was for a 6-month contract. So I was just, over the moon to start working. And and once I joined, I just, I loved it there. There was really good vibes. People were really welcoming, super helpful, and it just felt like, all those things that were going on in my head, 6 months ago, like, I'll never work in an agency again. I'm too old, and it was happening, and I was there, and I've been there 3 years now. But what I did, when I did go back, I did the sort of like the 6-month contract, and then I decided that I really enjoyed, obviously, learning all the digital skills that I'd learned on TechPixies, and with doing the sort of like the freelancer work as well. And I wanted to do digital, like, not just talk about it and be in the meetings about it, but actually do it, get in the platforms. And I think I'm just one of those people that, once you start actually doing the work and seeing how it all comes together, that's when it clicks, and you start to be like, oh, that takes that amount of time. What else is there to do? Like, is there, are there quicker ways of doing things, or what's the best approach? So that was the sort of like the big turning point of being able to go, well, I'm prepared to take a salary decrease because this is what's going to make me happy. And
so you saw that if you wanted to get really stuck in, you would have to almost start from the bottom and work your way up within this organization, even though you had a higher role at that time.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Just to be in it, and just, understand just the technical side of things. And I think, you just sort of like said it earlier, that, once you start, like, instead of being like, oh, I don't know that, how am I going to, find my way around that? But it's the day-to-day sort of like being in the different platforms, and how they all work. And
was that a good decision for you? I think that's an important thing to share with you.
Yeah. I look back now, and when things weren't great, it was horrible. But now I'm like, in a bizarre way, I'm thankful, because I never would have done that.
Wow.
I would have switched, and I probably would have found something, but whether or not I would have felt happy and knowing what I wanted to do.
And you've built up from that place now. So you took this pay cut to work to really get stuck in on the software, and then you've now worked your way up from that point. So what are some of your top tips for people? Because that was a big move to make.
So when I started, I was a biddable account executive, which is basically doing paid advertising on the search and social platforms, and then work my way up to senior account exec. And now I'm digital account manager. So I've just been, I feel like I'm still on my journey, but it's I'm still growing. I'm still, learning. And I think it's one of those things where, I've never asked for a promotion before, and it's important to have those sort of like those conversations. And I never did that before.
That's been something that's been really key to your success, is the ability to speak up, to talk to people within the company about where you want to go. And so share that with us, because I think there'll be people listening who are in jobs, and they've been in a job for maybe a long time, and they would like to progress, but they don't recognize or realize that in order to progress, often you have to be the catalyst of that people aren't just going to give you this opportunity to get promoted, that you actually have to almost create the environment in which you can get promoted. What were some of the things that really helped you as you prepared for those conversations to help you move forwards?
Yeah, so I think it's about having that sort of like that plan up front. So we have development discussions, twice a year. You've got a very clear plan of your goals, and being able to sort of have that evidence to back up those goals, and and making sure you're doing them, and you're working towards maybe being in that role before you get promoted. So it's the showing, the showing up, being consistent, putting your hand up, volunteering, and building up that evidence, and then being able to showcase it.
I love also that you said that you have, so twice a year you meet with someone and you talk about your goals.
So we have, so those are the sort of like, those periods, but we also have, weekly or fortnightly check-ins as well. So it's across that, it's not just twice a year to meet up. Line managers will meet regularly
and that's the sign of a really healthy company as well. Like, I think, and having, if they were encouraging you to do Gino Wickman's test, and they understand that system, which has the weekly check-ins, the bi-weekly check-ins, all of that. I think finding a company that has systems in place, that actually is that's huge. So I think it's great that you also, you found yourself in an environment that had really good structures, but then you also leveraged those structures to help you move forwards.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I'm kind of like starting career again. So like there's the sort of like transferable skills, which built up over the years as well, and I was underestimating some of those skills, which again, that's through being at TechPixies, where before I was saying, I've not got any skills, or I can't do anything, and then like you made us like write them all down. And then you start to go, well, yeah, there's this. And
your skills inventory, right?
Yeah.
If you that's the thing. We have all these incredible skills, and just because we had a child, the skill doesn't go out with the bath water or the nappies. Like, the skills are still there, but we have to remind ourselves of them, particularly if we haven't been using them for a while. So you had your skills list, which really helped you navigate and recognize that actually I have some skills to bring to this. Yeah.
And I think it's still that case of like, I'm still like, I'm working my way up again, and I know I'll get there, but I've got to, you've got to do, as you say, you've got to do the work.
Well, I listened to Dame Helena Morrissey give a talk about women in roles, and she was saying if a woman wants to be a CEO, she has to go into each job with and has to have a clear path to being a CEO. And she said, what people think is that I'm just going to do a good job, and I'm going to be recognized for that good job, and then I'm just going to get elevated to the next position, and that's how it's going to happen. And she said, no, it's like much more calculated than that. Like, you have to know where you're going before you can get there, just like what you were saying. And then you have to create the environment in which you're going to get the skills that are going to lead you to your next destination. And I think that was really powerful.
I think as well, it's sort of like there's elements that I'm still like learning, and I'm just trying to be like, we talk about like being T-shaped, and I think the more different types of things that you do, and that, then I might get to a decision where like, I really want to focus on that side of things, or go into that particular field. But it's still, as you're kind of like learning and it's the learning and growing, which is like, it makes me sort of like, really, really happy to just, to start again and build on things.
I think it's incredible what you've done. Now, you said you wrote down a couple of things you really wanted to touch on that you learned, that you took away from. And I know we've talked about a few. So the power of yet was one of them. Writing down your skill set was another. What are some of the other things that really had a big impact on you?
So we talk about, being, just having belief in yourself. And there were things that I was saying to my daughter, but I wasn't doing myself. The whole TechPixies is, about being brave and like having a go. You can do anything. So I'd be saying these things to my daughter, but I wasn't saying them to myself.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, there's all the books and all the podcasts that you recommend on the program. And I did read, you know, Everything is Figure Outable. And I loved the way that she talked about fear and turning that into, you know, if you do feel fear, to turn it around to, you know, face everything and rise. And that just makes you just, you know, take a deep breath and go, right, come on, let's do this kind of thing. And then I mentioned it before about, like, to be kind to yourself and be your own best mate. Because if a friend had come up to me and said, oh, I'm looking to restart my career, I'd be willing them on. I'd be, you know, really, really supportive, but I wasn't doing it to myself.
Yeah.
And then there was this thing where you talked about, if you stand up, there could be 100 people in the room, you know, 20% of those people are going to love you no matter what you say or do. They're there for you. You know, you've then got 60 who, you know, they don't really know you that well, but, you know, they're non-decided. And then you've got 10 that whatever you do, it's going to be a bit of like a problem there or something. Whereas previously I'd be trying to focus on that 10.
Yeah.
So I'm just now focusing on that, you know, the 20 and the 60 rule, and I think about that as well. You talk about, like, doing what you can with what you have now.
Yes.
And for me, that is really like time. We've only got so much time in our day-to-day lives. So I know life's busy, and but I do need to make sure I have that time for me, whether that be just going for a walk, or I need to see green, and I always feel better after a walk. So just making sure that I have that time for me. There's the you know, when you talk about, like, you're not going to die. So, you know, there are moments when you know, I still get nervous, but I just you know, I've got ways of kind of like dealing with that through some of the tricks that you.
Yeah, confidence, it comes from doing something you've never done before and realizing you didn't die.
And there was the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But I do a bit of a twist on that, because there was a chocolate bar years ago called 5, 4, and they did like this, just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it was do 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 do. And so when there's like a big thing and I can feel myself getting a bit nervous, like, I just have that in my head playing.
Oh, I love that.
So then it makes me sort of like, you know, smile and just sort of then just get on with it and not procrastinate, because that's what I was doing before. I was just like, can't do that, so I won't do it, and then it never gets done.
Yeah.
So that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 really helped me, and that's just on the big things that are coming up. I'm not sitting in the office singing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or anything. Using situation instead of problem.
Yep.
That's a really good one. So instead of using,
I was thinking that today about, like, actually, if you were to turn a problem into an opportunity, you know, so it's even further than situation, like the idea that the situation's neutral, right? The problem's neutral. It doesn't have a feeling about you, but you have a feeling about it. But even changing it from a problem to a situation, you start to see it differently. But if you change it from a problem to an opportunity, it's like, what's the opportunity here? What is there for me to learn here?
Yeah, keep moving forward. And then something like you mentioned as well, you talk about, you know, what's your gut saying? And before it'd be like, well, no, I just need to listen to what's going on in my head. But like those big decisions, I do believe they come from your gut, and you've got to listen to your gut. And then this is a random one from a cocktail film with Coughlin's Law. So he's one of like the key characters on the film, and he's got this quote of like, anything else is always something better. And it just makes you think about, you know, if you are in that situation of not knowing what to do, like doing nothing's going to change.
Yeah doing anything is better than doing nothing.
Yeah, and just to, like, it's taken me, I know everyone's, don't compare as well. That was the other key thing. And I think, you know, some people join TechPixies and they, you know, like me, they really don't know what they want to do or what direction they're going to go in, and it might take, you know, a bit longer. But, you know, keep moving forward, and you'll get there. And I'm still not there, but I'm in a much happier, better place, and I've got direction. And it's important to be in a place where you feel comfortable and happy.
Yeah.
To be going into work. And I know there's a lot of people at TechPixies, and they've done amazing things of setting up on their own. There's artists in the community.
Yeah, we've got artists, actors, singers,
film writers,
musicians. Yeah, we've got everything. Authors, social media managers. There's still a few of those around. No, I'm teasing. But we've got lots of people who have lots of different ideas for their businesses. And we've got a purse designer in there. We've got a lot of designers. We've got a lot of copywriters. We've got doulas and midwives. I mean, it's incredible, because I think partly because social media works for pretty much every industry. We've got people from every industry, which also creates a really vibrant community.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that my eyes were opened as soon as I was in the groups, because you start meeting people who we're in the same sort of like boat, because we're wanting to do something different, and there's some skills which we're all learning at the same time. But just being in, like, I remember my first breakout room, and I was like, oh. And I nearly like, I wasn't going to join. Like, and I was like, for God's sake, come on, like, going into the breakout room, and people were lovely, and it was just really, it was really nice to sort of like just chat with people, because that was at a time where there wasn't much social interaction as well. So that was like, it was really nice to meet people, and they were all doing different things as well. So that was inspiring to be around people who had got their business, or they were looking to do something else, or people like me that were just like, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm enjoying being around other women that were looking to figure things out.
Well, that's just it, being inspired and being around other people who are trying to figure it out. That's how you actually figure it out, and I think that there's beauty in that. Well, Sarah, first of all, obviously, thank you so much for my afternoon tea. I absolutely love that. But also thank you for being on the podcast and sharing your story. I think it's important for people to hear that you can be lost, and you can feel like you're too old to do things. You can feel like that it's not going to turn around, but actually that it can turn around, and it's a great story to share. And you're still working on building that career. But 3 years into it, you've made some great headway.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well about the whole age thing as well is that that's something which I've reframed as well, because I think I was being like anti-age to myself, which just it's ridiculous. And I want to live longer and happier, and so I'm like, I'm moving away from and I won't buy any products that have got anti-aging on as well, because I'm just and I keep getting these like ads for like these masks, with like LED lights. Have you seen these things? No. I'm just like, leave me alone. I'm happy, and I want to live longer, and so it's reframing that as well. And I think I did feel a bit like when I my line managers could be like 20 years younger than me, and I was thinking, oh, what are they thinking? Are they thinking, what's this oldie doing here, kind of thing? And it wasn't that at all. And they've been like the best line managers I've had, and so I just wanted to mention that as well, because I think that's important.
That is really important. I spent the weekend with a couple. One of them was, I think both of them mid 80s. And, the husband at one point, who's I think he's 84, he went down into the we were in Cornwall. He went down into the ocean, and he was on an old wooden board. And here he is, 84, bodyboarding on these old wooden boards. And the smile on his face, was amazing. And he stayed out there until he caught one wave all the way in. And then he said, okay, I got my ride in this year. And he came out, but he was so full of life. And we were talking about, just the fact that, that they were full of life. They were smiling, they were enjoying themselves, and it just showed you what's possible, right? And not everyone gets to be 84 and catching a wave, but if you have the opportunity to, sign me up, right? It made me wonder why I wasn't courageous enough to get my stuff on and get out into the water. But anyway, I think ageism it's real if you buy into it. It's real if you buy into it. And I think people have a choice. They can decide they're too old, or they can decide they're not old enough yet. Not too old yet. And so I think it is really important that we choose which side we are on, with that, because it will stop us from moving forward if we lean into the story that you're too old. And you look at Jane Fonda. I saw an interview with her when she turned 80, and she just got a whole bunch of roles in movies and continues to get a bunch of roles in movies. And she said, I'm just getting started, and I thought that was amazing. Here's a woman who's had a career for probably most of, better part of 60, 70 years. And she feels like she's just getting started at 80. So there is a whole nother generation of people who are living a lot longer, and we're going to benefit from that. So we've got to decide now which side we're going to be on. I love how you shared that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your story. I know people have got a lot out of this. I've got a live comment on Instagram that says, it's from Sue Harris. She says, I love your story. You took the first brave step, started again, and now are achieving so much more. Awesome. And Carol Rowe is also watching live on Instagram. She says, thank you for sharing your inspirational story, Sarah. And thank you, as always, Joy, for your constant inspiration. Oh, well, my pleasure, Carol. I just love speaking to people who have overcome the odds. And, obviously, Sarah, you're one of those people. And I really appreciate that you shared your story. So thanks again.
Thank you. Love you, Joy.
Love you too. Oh, I'm so lucky in the job that I do to get to connect with the most amazing people and work with the most amazing people. And Sarah is no exception. She is, as you heard from her today, she's just full of opportunity, and it wasn't always that way. And I'm grateful that some of that was aided by being part of TechPixies. And I just, I really want you to know, if you're listening to this podcast, I really appreciate you. I love sharing the stories that we share on the podcast, and we're going to be making some changes to the podcast and how we do that. We haven't completely made exactly the decisions that we're going to be making, but I want to thank everyone who does listen to this podcast regularly, because it means a lot to me that these stories inspire you and encourage you to keep going. So thanks for listening. I really appreciate you.